Welcome to the second part of my conversation with composer, educator, and conductor Roger Neill. Our mutual friend Ed Stone told me about uh, the times you worked together on Griffin and Phoenix, and he said there was this moment in the film where he wanted for the music to sound like George Gershwin. And he said after you did the score and recorded it, when he listened, he cried. Can you
Yeah.
tell me about the process? Because I feel like someone like you who has like so much experience, your own voice, right? When you told that they want your music to sound like somebody else, is it difficult? And what was your approach to that?
Well, first of all, if ever you can make your director cry in a good way,
Exactly. Yeah,
now you've done something really right.
for
So
sure. Yeah, for
that's really
sure.
nice. Um, Ed's movie Griffin and Phoenix takes place in New York City, and
Mhm.
there's many beautiful shots of the city. And I remember talking to him early on before he even shot the film, where he said he wanted Manhattan to be a character itself in this film.
Mhm.
And that was part of his goal. And I know somehow as soon as he said that, like I kind of heard the music because
Oh,
it's very romantic. I wanted to hear romantic, sort of nostalgic music, and I kind of like, oh, it's going to sound like this. Um, so that was actually much easier than the movie I'm working on now. Like I really knew early on in that movie, sort of what my approach would be.
mhm.
Now, I think we did mention Gershwin came up, but when something like that happens, someone says Gershwin, you have as a composer, you have to be like, well,
Mhm.
what part of Gershwin, like what piece or what kind of Gershwin,
Right.
you know? It'd be like telling an actor, I want you to give a performance that's like Gary Oldman.
Exactly. Yeah.
You want to ask, well, which movie, and which scene from which movie, and what about that scene from that movie? Oh, now I understand. Like if you can zero in on that,
Mhm.
it becomes a little clearer. So uh, I can play a little bit of Rhapsody in Blue uh, at the piano, the
Mhm.
easy part.
Mhm.
So I just like I played some chords. Right? I felt like I think this is the sound. These few chords, and that's all it took. Just like it's like a few beautiful chords that evoked that thing. And we were not trying to sound like classical jazz music in the 1930s. We were trying to make a modern score. So it's you just like you extract a little elements, few elements from the director's suggestion to just it's like some key ingredients, and then you make something special and something new and something fresh. That's part of the gig.
Right. Just for some information, Griffin and Phoenix was some of them. So for some of the movie was shot on the campus of Lehman College as well.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
Didn't know.
yeah, and starring Amanda Peet and Dermot Mulroney. The last time I said the name, it was I missed it. He is classical cello play,
Yes.
cellist, right? Apparently,
Mhm.
and he also played in a movie where you conducted the actors,
Yes.
showed
Well,
them how
Dermot
to.
Mulroney is a very fine actor, and at a certain point in my career, I had scored like four of his movies in a row.
Mhm. Wow.
Um, and I just like and before I even ever met him, and I finally met him personally, and then we became friends. And I said, dude, I think I've scored more Dermot Mulroney movies than any other composer.
Mhm.
Um, and he found that amusing. He was so he was in Griffin and Phoenix. He also was a guest character in the TV series, the Amazon series Mozart in the Jungle.
Right.
And in that series, he plays a concert cellist who was
Mhm.
like a famous cellist. And Dermot is a fine cellist. He plays quite well. And there was one concerto that Dermot, the real person, knew very well. It's by Elgar,
Mhm.
famous
Right.
uh, Gintero. And so we decided to make that the piece because the real person could already play that. So there's some technical stuff that involved, but it came down to he came to my studio here in Sherman Oaks, California, to record the cello parts in a room 6 feet away from me right now. And this is really beautiful. And then a few weeks later, he and I both were in New York at SUNY Purchase, where we shot Mozart in the Jungle, the concert hall there. And we played back the music that he recorded here, and it'd be a live orchestra. And we did the scene. That's how we did the scenes. And that orchestra would be conducted by the actor Gael Garcia Bernal. And among my many jobs in this Mozart in the Jungle was to be Gael's coach. So while Gael is conducting or pretend conducting on camera, I'm off camera for real conducting, and Gael would follow what I'm doing and mimic me while the camera's on.
Is it difficult to do? Was it difficult? Like, no, that's not how you do it. Like, your hand is not soft enough.
It was fun, you these actors are so good, you don't get to be that kind of actor without just having just great gifts. And Gael is very charismatic. And he was willing to learn how to look like a conductor. And we had discussions, he and I, about what kind of conductor this character would be. Because part of his personality comes across in the type of conductor he is. We decided he would be a Bernstein kind of conductor, a very romantic conductor, as opposed to a Karajan or Boulez conductor, who would be a sort of like a technical conductor. So yeah, he enjoyed working with me in that respect, like trying to find like how would this particular character communicate with an orchestra, if you will. And then at a certain point, me as a consultant, I was working as the music consultant and this coach. At a certain point, I have to step back and say, okay, now it's up to you. This is not, Mozart in the Jungle is not a documentary about conducting. It's about people. So at this point, I've given you what I think you need to play your role, but ultimately it's your decision. Like how do you convey the story you have to tell? And there's compromises. He might not always look exactly like how he's supposed to when he's conducting, but maybe we need to have him do a certain thing because what's going on during the story at that point requires him to actually act, which is what he's there to do.
Which is his job.
His job. But it's really fun. That TV series, Mozart in the Jungle, was a joy because I got to do all these things. Write music and work with the actors and to produce the soundtrack. It was super fun.
Yeah, it was every time the episode starts, the theme is slightly different, right? Different keys. It was so interesting because you don't really see that. It was very unique that way, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a fun thing. We were trying early on to figure out what the theme music should be. It would be like a classical piece of music, and ultimately it was the producer's idea. Roman Coppola is one of the producers, and there's a song Listomania by the band Phoenix, and the title Listomania just kind of like made sense. Like, let's use that as our starting off point for the main title. So I wrote a bunch of versions of that piece of music for the main title for Mozart in the Jungle. And it just also helped that the actual guy who wrote Listomania is also Roman's brother-in-law. So there was that too. He's here. Because he's married, I forget his name, to Sofia Coppola.
Right.
And whenever you work with the Coppolas, it's always a family affair. 100% true. But yeah, so that's how that worked out. And we did the first season I did a version of Listomania for full orchestra. It was super fun, and that exists on the Mozart in the Jungle soundtrack album. Then for the second season, we did shorter versions of the same piece of music, and each version of it was a different sort of style and arrangement of the same piece of music. And then our other producer, Jason Schwartzman, the actor,
Hmm.
I collaborated with a friend of his who was a visual artist, and that artist made these wonderful
Oh yeah.
collage animations of the main title, and I scored 8 of those for each of the 8 episodes.
Yeah, they're so pretty, like moving with the music, and just
Yeah.
I'm just like want to suggest people go and see. It's beautiful. Back to the girlfriend, I wanted to ask, like, do you encounter this kind of requests a lot from directors? Do they usually say like, is it often that they're like, I want it to sound like Beethoven or like Stravinsky or whoever? Like, do they do that a lot to you?
Oh, if they did, it'd be much easier, I
Oh,
think.
really? Okay.
Uh, yeah. Um,
It's good to know
yeah.
actually for
Usually,
future
it's
filmmakers.
more, we're like, we're usually talking more about what is this story?
Hmm.
Uh, and we're just trying to find out what is the music that feels right and unique to this story.
Right.
And
So
the
it's
answer is
more important for you, like, what are you trying to say? Like, you would
yeah.
ask that, would you?
Oh, for sure.
Hmm.
But with very specific questions and questions that would last over probably several weeks. You
Hmm.
know, what are we trying to say here? And um, yeah, it's a tricky thing, but it's also part of the fun because everyone involved in the movie is wanting to make something special, wanting to
Hmm.
make something special and unique, um, that they're proud of and that is meaningful to the people who watch it.
Hmm.
Even to make bad movies takes a lot of work.
Yeah,
And it
for
takes,
sure.
talented people doing their best takes taking a lot of work, and sometimes it doesn't land. But so like we're always trying to do something special.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it just requires a lot of discussion and a lot of false starts, and maybe it sounds like this, maybe it sounds like that, and after a while, you write enough pieces of music in a score that seem right enough, and then you kind of have developed, you've kind of honed in on the universe of this particular score, the score for this movie, the sound. And it could be very simple. Like it could be 6 weeks of just like doing everything. This movie I scored last year, where just like doing a whole bunch of stuff. And ultimately, after like 6 weeks of a bunch of music, it came down to one synthesizer patch and me clapping. That was the basic sound. Like me doing the clapping melt thing and this one patch, and then oh, that's our score. Um, just like okay, now I found it. It took all that time to find it. Now I found it. So that's uh, that's part of the process. That's part of the
Right.
fun.
I wonder, I don't know, like, you're welcome not to tell me though. Uh, do you ever had like so bad miscommunication with the director that you had to scrap your work several times and it was like, oh, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like, we can't communicate. Have you encountered that kind of experience ever?
No, no, I haven't, Maria. I, I've definitely had to scrap my work, but usually
Hmm.
because I'm miscommunicating with myself. Um,
Right.
and that's okay. It's really okay to
Hmm.
throw stuff out
Hmm.
that's not
Hmm.
working. Um, but I feel like if I'm miscommunicating with the director, it's my fault. It's not their
Oh,
fault.
okay.
The director knows what they want.
Hmm.
So it's really a matter of me, I think, finding the right questions, the
Hmm.
right way to ask them for me to get the information I need to do my work.
Have you like, I would think that people would encounter people, the directors, like, for example, the ones who are maybe not professional directors. Maybe, there are a lot of actors who become directors, right? Like, who do different things. And then they wouldn't able, like, I've heard of many stories of people like they don't know how to say like pan or like they don't know the language, so to speak, and they would say like like can you move the camera like and then maybe like they would communicate like that. Like, have you encountered this kind of problem? Who can't like just tell you what they want? Like, I just want it to sound like
Well, I figure by the time they show up in my studio with a movie, they're a professional director.
right.
Uh, if you have a movie, you're a professional director.
I don't
Um,
mean it like in a diminishing way in any way. Like,
I have not really encountered people who are arrogantly bad.
okay, cool.
People would say like, let's say your example. Let's say it's an actor who's directing for the first time, and I have, they might come to me and say, this is my first time out. I don't really know what I don't
Mhm.
really know the procedure, and so that becomes even more important that I do my job to help them.
Mm.
My
How
job. It's not
amazing.
their job
Hmm. Hmm.
to figure out a way to make it done. Because certainly that director, whether they're very experienced or not, they have a they have an I they have a very strong idea of the story they're telling. And that's all. That's really what comes down to. That's their job.
Hmm.
So, I think the only time it might really go off the rails, and it's so rare,
Hmm.
honestly, is if they want me to try a whole bunch of different things. Like I
Right.
don't know what, like, if they really don't know what they want. They
Hmm.
really don't know what they want. They want me to write it 10 different ways. Then it just becomes exhausting.
Right.
It's just like it becomes impossible at a certain point
Hmm.
because you cannot do your best work 10 times in a row.
Okay.
Uh, but I will say that's rare. That's really quite
Right.
rare. And I think, fortunately for me, at this point in my career, I've been around a while. So um, my directors tend to trust me.
Hmm.
Like you know what you're doing. Do what you need to do. Um, I don't need to be managed. You know. And then when I get to a point where I am confused about my own work, then I'll say, "Please help."
Right.
This is it. Please help me. Where do we go from here?
Right. I'm gonna take you a little bit away from the communication questions. Uh, we all been through the pandemic for the last 2 years, and any ups and downs and positive or negative things from that. How your process changed? Probably did a lot, right? Because you have to communicate with. Well, there's the word again, communicate with the musicians and through Zoom, probably. And did your process change, and did it open some new windows, doors for you, some bad or good from that experience of 2 years of in pandemic?
My process changed almost none at all.
Oh, cool.
If anything, the rest of the world started working like composers do,
Hmm.
because I'm in my studio every day working on my own hours. When I do my work, I send it off, and they listen to it, and we talk, and then I'm back to work. So
Hmm.
it, and this is true of all of my colleagues. We would talk during the pandemic and almost joke about this, like, yeah, nothing's changed for us. Everything is exactly how we've always done our work.
Right.
Um, and fortunately for me, I was able to secure a few movie contracts before everything shut down. So I was super busy. I was busy for a year while the world was falling apart, and I was happy. It was fine. The only thing that's changed, and I think it's for the better, is the Zoom thing. That was new, and so I previously I'm used to having people come to my studio
Hmm.
and spend time hanging out with me, and I love doing that, and I still do that. But it's less necessary. Not necessary at all anymore. And yes, during the pandemic was the first time I scored movies where actually did not meet any of the filmmakers in person. That was a first.
Right.
But the process wasn't that much different. Now
Hmm.
here we are, all few years later, and I think there's a positive thing that's come out of it, which is this: um, since I don't need to meet my collaborators in person, I don't have to be in Los Angeles. I don't have to be
Right.
anywhere in particular. I could be anywhere in the world, and I could have before, but it's way more acceptable now.
Hmm.
And I think that's it's worthwhile to know if you're a young person uh, trying to figure out where you should be to start your career.
Hmm.
Because I used to give the advice, it's simply easier to be in Los Angeles to start your career, and that still might be the case. But I think it's less important. Um, you can clearly just do your work anywhere in the world,
Right.
And I'm even considering that myself. Like maybe I don't need. Maybe I can move. Even move
Hmm.
to Mongolia. I'll start working from there.
Right.
But it's truly like my wife and I have discussed, saying, "Oh, maybe we should just move someplace else." Now it's acceptable.
Right.
Now it's
Hmm.
acceptable, and people that I'm working with will adjust to different hours if I'm elsewhere in the
Hmm.
country or elsewhere in the world. And I think it's a very liberating thing.
Hmm.
Oddly, it's one of the maybe weirdly positive things that came out of this whole COVID fiasco.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad it worked out for you so well. Solitary animals, right? Like composers, writers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, you have a long credits in feature film, video games, TV shows, commercials. Uh, does the process differentiate for you depending on where you're working on? And if so, which one is more fun?
Between what and what?
Well, if the process differentiates for you when you're working on, like the feature, maybe it's different for you when you work on TV show, and maybe it's even more different when you do video games, commercials. If they are different, which one is would be more fun for you?
Um, there's more similarities than differences, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I know. It all comes down to storytelling and music. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a feature film or a TV series or a commercial,
Mm-hmm.
or a game. And even when I do songwriting, because I've been doing record production lately as a new thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's also in a way about storytelling, about conveying emotion and then conveying ideas. Um, but there are specific requirements to each of these things, mostly having to do with your schedule, if you will. So with this movie I'm working on now, I'm starting it this month. I won't finish it till September. It's a long span of time.
Wow.
A TV series, I might have a week or 10 days for each episode. Something I like about that, just
Right.
like I only got this much time, and
Mm-hmm. The
it's
deadline.
all, yeah, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because your client, it's like being a PhD student. If you have 2 years to write your PhD, write your dissertation, that's a lot of pressure, you
Right.
know. And there's this pressure like I better write a dissertation which is worthy of 2 years of scholarly research. But if you only have a week to write a paper, that's easier. It's like you're going to have a paper that's it sounds like someone who's knows what they're doing worked on for a week.
Right.
So I like that. Um, commercials Commercials I like because I like doing them because the commercials I have done
Mm-hmm.
have almost always been with directors I've worked with in movies. So my director friends who will get commercials to work on, they'll assemble their team, and I'm part of that team, um, and that's fun. Also, because the commercials usually pay well, and not just pay well, but also have lots of resources, so we can like try stuff out as we make a commercial for a particular client, and then but if we can try stuff out and then use what we've learned for the independent film that we do later
Right.
on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just glad anybody wants me to do anything.
For sure. I, yeah. Uh, which one would do? Which one do you prefer, like arranging or composing? Because you do a lot of arranging, right?
Yeah. Um, you know, I'm having a hard time answering the question.
Sure.
I just like doing anything that seems fun, and I like it when people honestly I like it when people reach out to me and say I want to work with you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. I liked your work in the past, and I think we can work together, and um, that's the thing. I mean, it's uh, it's all about collaboration and finding people, getting together people and making something. So if it's a movie, it's a musical, whatever it is. It's like just enjoy being part of
Creative
a team of people.
process. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
I hear I don't know the story. That's why I'm asking. There's a story about a wine that was preserved for 8 years that turned into a cider. Can you tell me about that story?
uh, oh yeah. See, okay, Ed Stone, our mutual friend Ed Stone, um, he joined my family on a trip to Italy.
Right.
Boy, 20, almost 25 years ago.
Mhm.
It was like this like wonderful moment in time for a bunch of young people who were kind of like getting their first taste of professional success. And it's like one of those moments like, here we are in Italy, like, we're young professionals, we can actually afford to be here. We're in this wonderful square in Tuscany, and it's, wow, life's great. And the wine is great. So we bought a bunch of wine, and there was one, I think it was a bottle of Brunello de Montalcino.
Mhm.
I think I pronounced it incorrectly, but anyway, it was wonderful. I brought it back home from this trip, and I put it in my house and sort of let it like sit in a closet for a number of years. Finally, Ed and I, worked on this movie, Griffin and Phoenix,
Mhm.
and we decided to open the bottle as our valedictory, um, celebration, and it was just like undrinkable. It had been bruised. It was awful. So it was funny because it's like we spent all this time like trying to achieve these goals. Here we are a decade later, or you can celebrate, and we had this undrinkable bottle of wine, which is both funny and hope and I don't know,
Memorable.
memorable. Um, I guess I would say it wasn't an omen. It wasn't like this sour wine was an indicator of where our career had gone. It was just sort of like one of those things that happened. Yeah, it's probably more the fact that the wine was bad was maybe more memorable than if the wine were good.
Yeah, exactly. Like these, you wouldn't probably really think or remember that, right? I mean, if it was just like amazing wine, you would just drink it and move on.
Speaking of amazing wine, I'll tell you this real
Hmm.
quick story.
Hmm.
There was another project I was working on for, I mentioned Roman Coppola earlier.
Hmm.
I was doing a movie with him called CQ.
Hmm.
Is that one? No, it was after that. Another movie called, I forget what it's called. It was Charlie Sheen was in it. Anyway,
Right.
and it was a medium low budget film that Roman was financing himself. And he kind of like, uh, didn't exactly run out of funds, but at a certain point, it became easier for him to pay me in cases of Coppola wine than pay me in cash. So he came to my studio numerous times in his Lotus sports car that Charlie Sheen, his childhood friend, had given him, and would like give me cases of Coppola wine to pay me for my work. And that's my story. It's
Yeah.
good.
Well,
Good
at
wine.
least there was a wine that you could drink, right?
Yes, this was good wine. It hadn't gone bad.
When I was 17, I played in a commercial of shampoo, and
Mm.
they paid the half of my salary in money, and then the half they supplied a whole year worth of shampoo and conditioner, which I
Okay.
wouldn't use, and I
No.
would give it away to my classmates. It was a whole thing. Like at some point, I think people started to use the shampoo as a body gel and stuff. It was a long, long time ago, but
Well, at least your shampoo had a story with it.
yeah.
So yeah, it was more memorable. The story's more
Yeah,
memorable than the
exactly,
product.
right? These are the things that you remember. Uh, so how many actually instruments do you play? Because I sort of like lost the count reading
Hmm.
things about you.
I play lots of things. I started out my musical life as a flutist, believe it or not,
Hmm.
classical flute, and then piano, and then guitar. And in my studio now, I probably have several dozen guitars. Um, I don't know. I don't know the answer how many things I play, but us composers were we are actually recording artists. That's what we do because our music comes out of a loudspeaker. That's our medium.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I end up playing instruments that I don't even really play, as long as I can make some sort of sound that I can fit into a score.
Hmm.
So sometimes I will actually grab an instrument, let's say a cello. I don't really know how to play it, but I know how to like make a drone, and that ends up being an interesting sound, because maybe I'll play that cello so badly that no real cellist could actually play what I played, because I play it so poorly, and that becomes this unique sound. So
Yeah,
that's part of it.
right. So do you experiment a lot with things like, I don't know, not non-instrumental things to make a sound for your score?
Yes, I do. I do.
This must
Like
be
this
like
movie I'm
really
working
fun,
at
right?
now, Darby Harper Wants You to Know,
Hmm.
for example.
Hmm.
There's a group of characters who are cheerleaders in this movie, so we're using pom poms
Hmm. All right.
as percussion instruments in the score. Just
Cool.
seemed like a fun. And I don't know if anybody will actually realize they're pom poms, but it just seems like a fun thing to do.
The
So
process must be very fun, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it also makes my director happy. Oh, he's using pom poms. It's so cool.
Right. So I asked this question. This is my last question, and I ask the versions of these questions from almost every guest that comes to the podcast. So my version for you is, if you have to choose a single instrument to play for the rest of your life and you cannot touch anything else, which instrument would it be and why?
Wow. Wow. Do I have to? Oh my God.
No, you don't have to. Of course not.
Okay. I'll give you two answers.
Okay.
I'll make it a little easier. One, the instrument I really play is the computer. Kind of comes down to that. So that's cheating, but it's really, I mean, that's what I play best in a way. Is like using the computer to make music.
Sure.
That's answer one. But answer number two is, if I had to, for some inexplicable reason, choose one instrument, I get the most pleasure out of playing guitar.
Right.
So I would choose.
Okay. Okay. Bonus question. Sorry
Hmm.
for this. um, I would like to know, do you listen score other people's scores, like, because like how they say the good score in a film is the one that you don't really hear, but
Hmm.
maybe it's because I'm like, my first education is music. I like to listen to score. Like, my playlist has several scores from the films, and I like to listen to them. Do you listen to the film scores or TV show scores, whatever the scores
Yeah.
from other people?
Um, I think I try to. I think most of us film composers try to make film music that does not sound like film music. That is
Mm-hmm.
where our intention is.
Mm-hmm.
So there are many composers, colleagues, and other people in the profession who I admire, and I like their music. But I tend to consume their music within the movies themselves,
Mm-hmm.
rather than independently listen to a score
Right.
by such a composer.
Mm-hmm.
It's even more interesting to me to hear it, and hear it like how it's used.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I definitely have certain composers whose music I do enjoy very much, and I will just listen to it
Mm-hmm.
uh, independently. But the thing is, like, I find myself kind of rarely actually listening to music at all.
Oh.
Uh, I don't spend lots of times like sitting down just listening to the music.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll thumb through stuff, like a
Mm-hmm.
minute of something here and there. But it's odd. I don't. And I people will often ask me, what I listen to, and what kind of bands or what kind of artists
Mm-hmm.
I've discovered, and usually my answers are disappointing to them, because like they want to hear like what cool stuff you're listening to that's exciting to you, and it's like, it's not listening to much at all. So,
Right.
hmm.
What was the last thing that you saw, like TV show, episode, uh, film, that really stayed with you? That made you think about it for a while, or you thought, oh my God, this is brilliant.
Yeah, sometimes I'll hear a score to it. Let's say, in this case, TV shows where I don't like the music, and then I like the music.
Right.
Um,
Makes sense.
White Lotus is one.
Hmm.
I
Oh, right.
really did not like the music at all. Great TV series. But then
Hmm.
the more I heard it, the more I liked it. The more
Hmm.
recently, there is a TV series on Paramount called The Offer.
Hmm.
It was
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and
I'm
at first I did not like the
obsessed.
music at all. And then
Hmm.
it's about the story behind the making of the film The Godfather.
Right.
But the more I heard it, I liked it a lot.
Hmm.
So sometimes that happens. I heard a documentary film last year called Ascension. It's the name of the movie. It's about sort of industry and commerce in China,
Hmm.
and it was scores by like an EDM composer named Dan Deacon, who I had not heard of, but apparently he's quite famous.
Hmm.
I watched that movie and I was just excited. Like that movie, the music in that movie was so great. It really struck me. And it's wonderful when that happens. It's rare. It's not that I don't like stuff. It's just that it's rare that I hear something that just like is exciting
Of course.
and unexpected and
Hmm.
inspirational. That was one of those. So I just like, wow, this is special.
So cool. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Mhm.
much for doing this. And I wish you luck with your new score. And I'm so excited for your new work. Thank you for telling me about your new project because I thought that you probably won't be able to because, usually the productions, while in the production, you cannot say like, oh, everything's so hush hush. So thank you for taking the
Well,
time from your very, very, very busy day and talking to me today.
thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your wonderful questions. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye.
12 Hours in the Future is produced by Jim Carney and Maria Sanchir, with technical help from Daryl Mandiola. Special thanks to Professor Tom O'Hanlon, Dean James Mann, Professor Stephanie Stowe, Ed Stone, and Magda Soto. The executive producer and host of 12 Hours in the Future is Maria Sanchir. 12 Hours in the Future with Maria Sanchir is a series of conversations recorded with the resources of Lehman College, City University of New York. You can find us everywhere podcasts are available and on YouTube. This show is protected under international copyright and may not be recorded or retransmitted without written consent. Until next time, when we see you 12 hours in the future.